Hey, Bastich here, and welcome to a special episode of 64K.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastish B.
And welcome back. So in this special episode, we're going to have a look at FREEZE64 Fanzine. This is a Commodore 64 fanzine run by Vinny Mainolfi. I've also got to interview him for this video, so we'll be looking at not only the fanzine, but talking to Vinny himself. So FREEZE64 Fanzine feels a lot like those old 80s kind of UK gaming magazines, the Commodore 64 ones obviously, like Zap64 and Commodore User, all the ones that I used to read. It's got a very similar kind of feel to it, but of course it's got its own kind of style. It's 35 pages of just Commodore 64 goodness in each issue, so let's have a look at it in a little bit more detail. So as you can see, each cover looks absolutely fantastic, featuring the main game that is featured in each issue. This is Who Dares Wins. And over here you can see Legend of Atlantis. And of course the late great Ben Daglish. So I asked Vinny what was the spark that made him decide to start the fanzine. There was no spark, it was a yearning to creating a zine of my own since the early 80s when I first got hold of a Commodore 64. I've always created comics and zines for my own amusement, but it wasn't until I learned all the elements throughout my working career such as marketing, sales, design, product design, admin, accounting that I finally felt confident enough to design, produce and sell my very own C64 zine. Okay, so let's start diving in a little deeper and check out the main contents page. Here's a look at a typical contents page. I love the way the issue is written like you're loading a disc game. Obviously these contents change issue to issue, but this is the general idea of what you get. Cover story featuring Head Over Heels, the main game, Moldy Cupboard, I'll talk about that later. Diary of a Game, talking to programmers, Julian Rignall's Zap Back. Coder's Corner, more chatting with programmers from the C64 days, and C64 Heaven is like collectors showing their C64 wares. So this is what the average cover game segment looks like. You got Head Over Heels is featured here, the game profile, there's the publisher, what year, etc. And below that is what Zap64 gave it for a rating. I love that, I do that myself in my videos. And this is more about the game, the story, etc. and Vinny's verdict over there. And on the second page he talks to one of the programmers, asking him a few questions, and also very interesting about his reviews here, he asks a whole lot of subscribers and journalists and other people what they thought of the game for a completely different perspective. I think that's a very clever idea. So I asked Vinny if there was ever really a choice in making either a physical or digital version of this fanzine, and he said, "The only choice I gave myself was a physical zine. I grew up buying and collecting magazines, and I knew that there were still many C64 users out there who did the same and were still looking to buy a zine they could hold in their hands and read. Digital was never an option and doesn't excite me one bit. If FREEZE64 went digital, there would be no point in me producing it as a zine." So the bulk of every issue of FREEZE64 usually deals with, say for example, the cover game. This is Mugsy's Revenge. It's an excellent Commodore 64 game if you've never played it before. So they have a look at Mugsy's Revenge in a lot more detail. There's also usually in every issue, there's interviews with programmers, graphic artists, all guys that worked in the Commodore 64 scene then and now. So it varies issue to issue. But what doesn't vary is cheats. FREEZE64 loves its cheat sections. So screen skipping is one of the many variations on the cheating segments that appear in FREEZE64. This one is pretty unique. Most cheats usually just involve gaining extra lives or, level skips or making yourself invincible, that kind of stuff. But this is actually skipping screens. So basically how this works, if you have an action replay cart, you just freeze the game and input the code, or the pokes as they used to call them, and then you'll be able to, skip screens. It works for games like, single screen games that kind of flip to each thing, like Barnsley Badger or Soulless, or the ones that are mentioned here. So I like this as a clever little way of making cheats more interesting as opposed to just your usual. Of course, the usuals also make the appearance in Freeze all over the place and many other issues as well. I asked Vinny how difficult it was to put together that initial issue, and he said, It was pretty easy and very quick to do. I had so much experience under my belt, so much content I wanted to write about, and also so much love for the C64 that it all just came out in a massive wave onto the page. It hasn't stopped flowing since. Here's Diary of the Game. It's like a chronicle of the making of Badlands on the C64. And here has a little look at the legend of Atlantis and a discussion, find out a bit about the making of the game. Each issue has a lot of segments like this where he's talking to different programmers or developers about the making of their games, which is pretty cool. I asked Vinny whether it was just him working on FREEZE64, and he said, "Yep, just me." Julian Rignall kindly provides around 1,000 words for his wonderful Zapback column. Steve Collins provides his great Badlands diary to publish. And my best friend Frank Gasking of GTW provides a few wise words here and there as well as proofreading. Apart from that, I write 90% of it. I design, page set and edit it all in Word. I manage the print ordering, I process all the subscriptions and orders that come in. I pack and post most of them with a little assistance from my daughter Lucia, and I do all the admin, accounting and tax returns. Since the beginning of September 2020, I've posted out over 18,000 copies. Believe it or not, but the designing and writing are the easy parts to producing a zine. So the writing quality in FREEZE64 is really good. It's not like some blog that some dude rolled out of bed in the morning and decided to write in 5 minutes. It's good quality. You can especially tell that by the interviews. When you read the interviews, you can tell that Vinny knows his stuff. He's done research. He's asking real questions to the programmers. So as a programmer himself, he knows the ins and outs, so it makes it a lot more interesting to read. Another thing I also like is the fanzine's layout, just of every page. It's really good quality. It doesn't look like a fanzine. It looks like a real 100% professional production, which it is. But you know what I mean, it feels like a big run press of an old magazine, like it just got that awesome quality about it. I also like that, you know, around the edge of the border, sometimes he puts little like characters from games and has a little speech bubble. It's very reminiscent of the old Zap64. They used to do that around the edges, like somebody was just doodling. It's quite a nice little touch, and it's very nostalgic. I gotta mention the quality of the printing and the paper. It's just really nice and excellent. It feels good, it doesn't feel cheap at all. And I also love the adverts. They got adverts for like contemporary games and peripherals. It's just great quality overall. The little extras are also cool, like this Who Dares Win sticker. And also these little FREEZE64 cards. They're cheat cards. This one's for Mikey. If you flip it over, you can see the pokes, like Infinite Laugh, Stop the False Teeth, and that kind of thing. It's a nice throwback to the old magazines that used to do these kind of things as well. So I asked Vinny, when did he start the fanzine and how many countries does he send issues to? I first started FREEZE64 on a Sunday morning on the 23rd of July 2016. I woke up and decided this was the day to start my very own fanzine. FREEZE64 is posted all over the world. I haven't counted how many countries it goes to, but I can tell you that there are a lot less countries it doesn't go to. We post them out to Russia, China, Japan, South Korea, Tasmania, Australia, New Zealand, Algeria, South Africa, Malta, Gibraltar, Argentina, Brazil, Falkland Islands, and almost every country in Europe, USA, Canada. The list is long. If you're a Commodore 64 fan, you might have come across one of Vinny's websites. It's called C64 Endings, where it chronicles the endings to Commodore 64 games. You might have come across some of the videos on YouTube. Basically, he has a look, completes a game, records it. On the website, you can see like the still frames for the ending, and there's also a link to the video, so you can check it out on YouTube. This is kind of continued on in FREEZE64. So I asked Vinny what was the inspiration to do C64 game endings, and does it only exist now in FREEZE64? From the moment I played my first C64 game, I was fascinated by what was waiting for me at the end. I think the first game I wanted to see the ending to was Laser Zone by Jeff Minter. I started hacking and producing my own discs full of game endings. And then in 1997 I started producing my own website dedicated to C64 game endings. It's still available as an archive. I have hundreds more to add, but I no longer have time, and I'll slowly start revealing them through FREEZE64. So there's obviously a lot more awesome segments in each issue. These are some of my personal favorites. So the moldy cupboard is one I really like. He takes a look at a super obscure Commodore 64 game, goes through it, tells you what it's about, you know, gives his verdict on what it is. It's super cool because I've honestly never even heard of half of these games, and I'm a massive C64 gamer. Like this one, for example, Bath Time, it's made by PSS. I mean, I only know PSS as a maker of like strategy war games, so this is like completely out of left field. I've never heard of this game either. It's just super cool to find out about these obscure things. So I asked Vinny if he ever gets overwhelmed with what game to cover next due to the C64's massive library, and he said, no, not at all. I find it incredibly easy and exciting because I pick a game I enjoy. Also, most of the cover features are now driven by who I've interviewed, so at this moment in time I know exactly what games are going to feature on the cover for the next 20 issues. It's a lot of fun and comes very easy and natural to me. I don't sweat any of it. And the last little segment I just want to mention briefly is called Julian Rignall's Zapback. If you don't know who Julian is, he was an editor and reviewer for Zap64 during its most prolific period, at least in my opinion. This is him looking back nostalgically at an issue and seeing what games they reviewed and what he actually said about them and whether they still hold up. I think it's a pretty cool idea, and obviously it's written by him, so the quality is really good. If you love Zap64, you'll definitely get a kick out of this segment. So the final question I asked Vinny was, do you pick games that appear in FREEZE64 based on games you personally love or games you think readers will respond to? And he said, I always pick games I enjoy and never write or produce a feature thinking that the reader will enjoy it. I write for myself and write because I enjoy it, and then hopefully the reader will enjoy it too. I always say that the trick to producing a successful zine is to write about what you know and what you enjoy. The fact that our readers are enjoying what I produce is a bonus, and fortunately readers do respond, and they respond a lot, and positively too. So overall, FREEZE64 Fanzine is absolutely fantastic. It is really high quality. There's nothing else out there covering the Commodore 64 scene in this kind of format that is so good. I would highly recommend subscribing. I'm a subscriber myself. It's very reasonably priced. If you live in UK or in the rest of the world, it's regardless, you're gonna get a good deal. And I'd just like to thank Vinny one more time for taking the time to do the interview. It made the video a whole lot better. Thank you very much. Please check out FREEZE64, and from me, BassHB at 64K, I hope you had a good time. If you can like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated. I'll see you next time. Cheers.